Hello, everyone. I am the sleep storyteller, and I am here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a lot. Also, let me know in the comments, where are you from and what time are you listening? Now get comfortable and relax. Spring at Hogwarts arrived not with a grand fanfare, but with a quiet, almost secretive shift. The stubborn frost of winter loosened its grip, vanishing under the growing warmth of golden sunlight. The castle, ancient and wise, seemed to awaken alongside the season, exhaling a breath that carried the scent of damp earth, fresh grass, and the lingering promise of something new. The Black Lake, once a frozen mirror of the winter sky, rippled gently now, its waters catching the light like liquid gold. Somewhere beneath its surface, the giant squid stretched lazily, disturbing the calm with slow, deliberate movements. Above, the castle spires stood tall against the endless blue, their stone warmed by the soft touch of spring. Students emerged from the shadows of the stone corridors, blinking against the brightness of the outside world. Heavy winter cloaks were abandoned, replaced by lighter robes that fluttered in the breeze. Laughter and chatter filled the courtyards, voices buoyed by the sheer relief of fresh air after months of confinement. Near the lake's edge, a group of third years sprawled across a patchwork of blankets, each woven with the colors of their houses: deep crimson, royal blue, golden yellow, and emerald green. Some of the blankets had been charmed to repel dirt, while others carried the comforting sense of home. The warm embers of Gryffindor's common room fireplace, the cedarwood and parchment of Ravenclaw Tower, the freshly baked bread from Hufflepuff's underground halls, and the cool, earthy moss that lingered in the depths of Slytherin's lair. Baskets of treats, pilfered from the great hall, were spread out between them. Pumpkin pasties, warm and flaky, filled the air with their spiced aroma, while a tin of treacle tarts sat in the center, their golden crusts glistening in the sun. A flask of enchanted lemonade shimmered, shifting between hues of pink and gold as it was poured into goblets that cooled at the touch. The students spoke in low, relaxed tones, their conversations drifting effortlessly between subjects, class assignments, Quidditch standings, and the latest antics of Peeves, who had spent the morning switching the ink colors in the professor's quills. Those unlucky enough to have fallen victim to his mischief now sported essays written in neon pink, glittering silver, or in one unfortunate case, vanishing ink that had left nothing but blank parchment. Down by the shoreline, first years huddled in small groups, cautiously dipping their hands into the water. The lake was calm, its surface reflecting the sky in perfect symmetry, but every so often, a playful ripple would disturb the stillness. A tentacle would break through, curling lazily before slipping beneath the water once more. The younger students watched in fascination, their gasps and hushed whispers carrying on the wind. Higher up on the grassy slopes, others had retreated into quiet study. Textbooks lay open, their pages fluttering in the breeze, while quills scratched softly against parchment. A few students practiced wand movements, the leaves of nearby trees trembling in response to invisible forces. Others simply stretched out beneath the open sky, arms tucked behind their heads, allowing themselves the rare indulgence of doing nothing at all. A wooden chessboard had been placed between two students, the enchanted pieces stretching as if waking from slumber. Their movements were deliberate, precise, as the game began. Nearby, another student traced the shifting clouds with their eyes, pointing out shapes that seemed unmistakably like broomsticks, cauldrons, and dragons. The lazy rhythm of the afternoon settled over them, wrapping the castle grounds in a comfortable stillness, broken only by the occasional gust of wind that sent a flurry of white petals dancing through the air. Some landed softly on the blankets, others tangled in robes and hair, as if nature itself sought to take part in the quiet joy of the day. As the afternoon stretched on, the sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows over the grounds. The castle, bathed in golden light, seemed to hum with a quiet magic, its ancient stones absorbing the warmth of the day. A distant chime echoed from within the walls, signaling the approach of dinner. There was a collective sigh as students reluctantly began gathering their belongings. Blankets were shaken free of crumbs, leftover treats tucked away for later indulgence, and goblets emptied before being carefully stowed. The walk back to the castle was slow and unhurried, the warmth of the day lingering in every step. Behind them, the black lake stretched out in the fading light, its surface catching the last rays of the setting sun. The forbidden forest stood at the horizon, its edges tinged with the soft green of new growth. A breeze carried the scent of damp moss and wildflowers, a reminder that spring had only just begun. And though the students left the grounds behind, the promise of more days like this, days of warmth, laughter, and quiet wonder, remained woven into the very fabric of Hogwarts itself. Within the castle, the transition from day to night unfolded in its usual rhythm. The great hall flickered with candlelight, the long tables filled with the familiar sounds of clinking goblets and the murmur of conversation. But beyond the bustling heart of Hogwarts, something quieter stirred. Beneath the towering glass panes of the greenhouses, magic hummed in the soil, responding to the change in season. Thick vines, once dormant, began to unfurl, stretching toward the warm glow of enchanted lanterns. Leaves trembled, adjusting to the shift in temperature, while the soft glow of enchanted flora pulsed like fireflies in the dimming light. In the largest greenhouse, Professor Sprout's domain, the scent of damp earth mingled with the fragrance of blooming plants. Large pots lined the stone pathways, each home to magical flora in various stages of growth. Flutterbee bushes quivered as students passed, their delicate blossoms trembling with anticipation. Bouncing bulbs, now fully awakened from winter's dormancy, pulsed with energy, their roots occasionally shifting in the loose soil. Tucked in a quiet corner, beneath the protective arch of enchanted ivy, a peculiar plant had begun to bloom. It was small, nearly hidden among its more robust neighbors, its petals tightly furled as though hesitant to reveal itself. Its leaves shimmered faintly, catching the dim light, but it remained still, as if waiting for something unseen. Beyond the greenhouse, the castle grounds continued to hum with the quiet magic of spring. The day had given way to night, but in Hogwarts, nothing ever truly slept. The enchanted glass of the greenhouses held onto the last remnants of warmth, a gentle glow emanating from within. The plants, now fully awakened to the season's call, would continue their slow, steady growth beneath the watchful care of their keepers. Outside, the first stars appeared in the darkened sky, their light reflecting softly against the castle's towering windows. And within these walls, the story of spring at Hogwarts was still unfolding. A quiet magic interwoven with the changing of the seasons, waiting to be discovered by those who chose to listen. Night had settled over Hogwarts, draping the castle in a hush that was never quite silent, but something close. The torches lining the corridors flickered with a soft glow, their enchanted flames burning steadily against the cold stone. Outside, the forbidden forest whispered with unseen movement, the rustling of leaves, and the distant hoot of an owl blending into the hush of spring's embrace. Yet within the castle walls, something stirred not the students, who had long since retired to their dormitories, but the magic itself. Hogwarts was never truly still. It breathed, shifted, renewed itself in ways most never noticed. In the vast library, dust lifted from the oldest tomes in golden wisps, carried away by an invisible current of energy. The books, which had remained untouched in the quiet weight of winter stillness, now seemed to sigh in relief as their pages fluttered ever so slightly. Somewhere in the restricted section, a heavy chain uncoiled and refastened itself around a restless volume, subduing its attempts to slip free. On the far side of the hall, portraits that had faded beneath layers of candle soot regained their brilliance, their colors deepening, the faces within them stretching and adjusting to their refreshed surroundings. The enchantments that bound Hogwarts to its eternal rhythm were at work, unseen but ever present. In the great hall, where thousands of footsteps had worn against the stone floors over centuries, a subtle glow passed over the long wooden tables, smoothing imperfections, mending scratches left by generations of students. The floating candles, suspended high above, burned just a little steadier as their wax replenished itself. Even the enchanted ceiling, reflecting the star-speckled sky, sharpened its image, as though the constellations themselves had been dusted clean. Beyond the main halls, deeper within the castle's hidden passageways, Hogwarts house elves carried out their quiet, unseen work. The suits of armor standing at attention along the corridors gleamed under their careful touch, their once dull crests now polished to a mirror-like shine. In the kitchens, copper pots and silver goblets glowed with renewed brilliance, lined up neatly on long counters, awaiting the feasts yet to come. Even the staircases, notorious for their shifting unpredictability, paused momentarily in their mischief, allowing the enchantments to reinforce their aging steps. The railings lost the feint whereof centuries of hands sliding over them, and the trick steps, the ones that had snared countless students, seemed to reconsider their placements, as if deciding whether to stay or move once again. But it was in the unnoticed corners of the castle where the true magic of spring's renewal unfolded. In the forgotten alcoves where cobwebs had gathered, in the tiny spaces between bookshelves where dust had settled, in the quiet dormitory nooks where lost quills and stray buttons had been misplaced, the enchantments moved with an almost sentient awareness, setting each object back into its rightful place. The castle was preparing itself for the season ahead, restoring its grandeur in ways that no one would fully recognize, but everyone would feel. By dawn, Hogwarts had completed its quiet transformation. The dust that had drifted in golden threads had settled, vanished without a trace. The torches burned brighter, their glow reflecting against polished stone, and the air carried the faintest scent of fresh parchment and morning dew. As the first students stirred from their dormitories, stretching and rubbing the sleep from their eyes, they would not notice the changes outright, but they would feel it, the unspoken magic woven into the very stones of the castle. A quiet assurance that Hogwarts, in its ancient wisdom, had prepared itself for the days to come. Morning light filtered through the high windows, casting golden patterns across the castle floors. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall mirrored the cloudless sky above, its brilliant blue stretching endlessly overhead. The warmth of spring had settled in fully now, and beyond the heavy wooden doors of the castle, the courtyard had transformed overnight. The once frost-bitten flagstone paths now radiated gentle heat beneath the students' footsteps. The hedges bordering the courtyard had grown fuller, their deep green leaves rustling in the breeze. Along the stone archways, enchanted flowers had begun to bloom, their delicate petals shifting toward the sun, as if basking in its glow. At the center of it all, the large marble fountain trickled with clear, cool water, its surface shimmering under the morning light. Carved into its base were mermaids, their stone expressions serene, their features more lifelike than ever before. Benches, which had remained largely empty during the colder months, were now occupied by students savoring the warmth of the morning. Some sat with textbooks open on their laps, their pages illuminated by dappled sunlight. Others rested against their bags, eyes half-lidded in contentment as they soaked in the fresh air. The steady scratch of quills against parchment drifted through the space, blending with the occasional rustle of turning pages. Near the far edge of the courtyard, an enchanted chessboard had been set up atop a sturdy stone table. The pieces moved in silence, responding to the calculated, deliberate movements of their players. Pawns shifted, knights turned, and a bishop slid across the board with quiet precision. Occasionally, a captured piece would let out a disgruntled huff before vanishing in a puff of white smoke much to the amusement of onlookers. A warm breeze stirred the air, carrying the scent of parchment, sun-warmed stone, and the faintest trace of honeysuckle from a creeping vine reclaiming its place along the archways. Above them, the enchanted sky of the great hall reflected the same endless blue as the real sky beyond the castle walls. The shadows stretched lazily across the courtyard, shifting as the sun inched higher into the sky. Despite the pockets of quiet study, there was an unmistakable liveliness in the air. Ink bottles clinked as students recapped them. Parchment crinkled beneath careful hands, and laughter rippled through the space before fading into the golden warmth of the morning. The castle, ancient and ever watchful, seemed to embrace the change, allowing this rare moment of stillness to settle within its walls. As the hours passed, the sun dipped lower, softening its golden rays into a gentle amber glow. The courtyard, once filled with the rustling of pages and quiet murmurs, began to empty as students gathered their belongings. The enchanted flowers slowly tucked in their petals, sensing the approach of evening, while the fountain continued its steady trickle, unbothered by the passage of time, though the warmth of the afternoon would soon fade into the cool embrace of night. The courtyard remained a quiet refuge, patiently awaiting the next golden day when students would return, books in hand, to sit beneath its sheltering trees once more. As the last of the students departed, the warmth of the afternoon lingered in the air, stretching toward the distant towers of Hogwarts. Shadows lengthened along the castle walls, tracing the familiar pathways that led to the owlery, perched atop its steep hill. The sun had not yet fully set, but within the tower, a different kind of magic had already begun to unfold. High atop the steep hill that overlooked the Hogwarts grounds, the owlery stood in quiet watch, its circular stone tower open to the shifting winds of the Scottish Highlands. The scent of parchment, straw, and feathers lingered in the cool evening air, mixing with the fading warmth of the setting sun. Within the tower, hundreds of owls perched on wooden beams and stone ledges, their golden eyes reflecting the last glimmers of daylight. Some preened their feathers, ruffling them against the breeze, while others sat perfectly still, as if listening to something beyond the reach of human ears. As spring settled over Hogwarts, the owlery took on a life of its own. The long, bitter nights of winter had made flights more difficult, their wings burdened by the weight of snowfall and the bite of frigid winds. But now, with the arrival of gentler breezes and clearer skies, the owls stirred with renewed energy. Each evening, as the castle below began to quiet, a peculiar ritual unfolded in the highest reaches of Hogwarts, one that had persisted for centuries, unnoticed by most. Throughout the day, small objects had begun appearing in the nests scattered across the owlery. Scraps of parchment, torn from old letters, lay nestled between twigs. Quills, forgotten on desks and lost beneath stacks of books, found their way here, their ink-stained tips peeking out from bundles of straw. Stray bits of ribbon, left behind in common rooms, fluttered in the breeze as as they dangled from carefully woven nests. Some of these objects had been scavenged by the owls themselves, plucked from the castle's quietest corners. Others seemed to appear as if placed there by the unseen magic of Hogwarts. As twilight deepened, the owlery grew restless. The owls busied themselves with their nests, arranging and rearranging their newfound treasures with deliberate care. Delicate strips of parchment were woven between twigs, their inked words now unreadable beneath layers of downy feathers. A discarded quill, once used to scribble hurried notes in the library, was placed like a decorative plume among the straw. Even a wax seal, its Hogwarts crest still faintly visible, had been tucked into a nest, gleaming softly in the fading light. Soft hoots filled the air, a rhythmic sound that blended with the whisper of wings as owls shifted between perches. Some took to the sky, gliding effortlessly through the open arches of the tower, their dark silhouettes cutting across the dusky horizon. They would return, as they always did, carrying fresh additions to their nests, tiny tokens gathered from the unseen corners of the castle, remnants of letters sent and received, forgotten, but never truly lost. Below, the castle carried on, unaware of the quiet tradition unfolding above. The great hall glowed with the golden light of floating candles, its long tables crowded with students enjoying the evening feast. In the common rooms, laughter and murmured conversation filled the spaces where students settled into armchairs, their books open, but their minds already drifting toward the comfort of sleep. But high in the owlery, beneath the vaulted ceiling and the cool breath of night, the owls continued their work. Their nests, once simple and unadorned, had become tapestries of Hogwarts itself, a patchwork of the years, letters, quills, and parchment woven together in a silent celebration of spring. And as the first stars blinked into the night sky, the tower, perched high above the rest of the castle, remained a world apart, a place where magic wove itself into the smallest, most unnoticed moments. Night deepened over Hogwarts, stretching its cool embrace across the castle grounds. The owlery, high in its secluded tower, remained a sanctuary of soft feathers and rustling wings, while below, the corridors of the castle glowed faintly with torchlight. A hush had settled over the great stone halls, broken only by the distant crackle of enchanted flames and the occasional creak of shifting staircases. Yet deep within the dungeons, nestled behind heavy wooden doors reinforced with iron, the night had not yet called for rest. The potions classroom remained bathed in the low flicker of candlelight, its air thick with the mingling scents of herbs, damp stone, and the faint traces of past experiments. Shelves lined with glass vials glinted in the dim glow, each container filled with swirling liquids of every imaginable hue, some resting in eerie stillness, others shifting as though stirred by an unseen hand, though the usual hum of students occupied the space during lessons. The classroom was now silent, save for the occasional drip of condensation from cauldron lids and the whispering of flames beneath simmering brews. This was the domain of those who understood that magic was not always found in the flick of a wand, but in the slow, patient art of mixing, measuring, and refining. At this time of year, one potion in particular made its return. It was a delicate infusion, crafted only when spring's magic had fully awakened. Its recipe was an old one, passed through the hands of skilled potion makers, whispered between apprentices, never recorded in any official text. It was known simply as the potion for springtime dreams. Its ingredients could not be gathered in winter, nor could they be plucked without care. Moonblossoms, their petals silvered by starlight, had to be harvested at the precise moment they unfolded. Slivers of crystallized honey, drawn from enchanted beehives in the forbidden forest, melted into the brew, thickening it with golden warmth. A single drop of morning rain, untouched by human hands, carried the essence of spring's renewal. When brewed correctly, the potion shimmered like the first light of dawn, shifting between hues of pale pink and soft lavender. Its surface moved as if caught in a gentle breeze, rippling in slow, rhythmic waves. A single sip was said to weave the drinker into the fabric of spring itself, lulling them into dreams filled with the scent of blooming orchards, the warmth of sunlight against their skin, and the quiet murmur of streams winding through fields of wildflowers. It was not a potion of sleep, nor one of visions. It was simply a glimpse into the heart of the season, captured in liquid form. Few ever mastered its brewing. Too much heat and the delicate balance of flavors would scorch, leaving behind nothing but a bitter, lifeless draft. Too little, and the potion would remain dormant, its magic never fully unfolding. It required patience, an understanding of the way spring itself moved, not in haste, but in slow, deliberate growth. As the night stretched on, the potion cooled in its cauldron, settling into the quiet pulse of its enchantment. Beyond the dungeon walls, the castle remained still, wrapped in the soft hum of sleeping magic. Somewhere in the distance, the first breeze of early morning slipped through an open window, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and budding flowers. By dawn, the potion for springtime dreams would be ready, waiting to capture the essence of the season in a single, fleeting sip. Dawn arrived with a hush, spilling golden light across the castle's stone floors, chasing away the last remnants of night. The torches that had burned steadily through the dark dimmed their glow, retreating as daylight took its place. Within the dungeons, the potion for springtime dreams rested in its cauldron, its soft lavender surface still waiting. The scent of honeyed blossoms lingered in the air, blending with the cool dampness of stone, marking the quiet success of an age-old brewing ritual. But beyond the shadowed depths of the dungeons, where the castle stretched upward into spiraling staircases and grand corridors, another kind of magic was waking. The Hogwarts library, vast and labyrinthine, stirred in the morning light. Its towering shelves stood in hushed reverence, filled with endless volumes bound in worn leather and enchanted cloth. The scent of parchment and ink clung to the air, mingling with the faintest trace of candle smoke. Dust Moats hung suspended in golden shafts of light, disturbed only by the occasional flutter of a turning page. But deeper within the library, hidden beyond the well-trodden aisles and the ever-watchful gaze of Madame Pince, there was a place few had ever found, tucked behind an unassuming bookshelf, past a row of forgotten tomes bound in emerald and dusty gold, lay something that should not have existed within the castle's stone walls, a garden. No records spoke of its creation. No maps of the library marked its existence. It was a space conjured by ancient magic, hidden between the turning pages of history, waiting only for those who truly sought it. The entrance was never in the same place twice, appearing only when the castle willed it, shifting through the endless shelves like a secret kept just beneath the surface of the known world. The moment one stepped through, the air changed. The scent of parchment gave way to the perfume of ivy, its emerald tendrils winding through an intricate latticework of iron archways. A glass ceiling, enchanted to mirror the sky above, bathed the space in golden light, dappling the stone pathways below. The quiet murmurs of the library faded, replaced by the rustling of petals and the soft trickle of an unseen fountain. The garden itself was modest, a courtyard hidden within the vastness of Hogwarts. Its stone pathways were lined with wildflowers that did not grow anywhere else in the castle. Some glowed faintly, their petals humming with stored magic, while others swayed despite the absence of wind, reacting to unseen energies woven into the space. A solitary wooden bench, aged yet untouched by time, rested beneath the shade of a twisting silver-barked tree, its roots tangled into the very foundation of the castle. Scattered throughout the garden were books, not the kind that lined the library shelves, but volumes that had been forgotten, misplaced, or perhaps left behind intentionally. Their spines were worn, yet unbroken, resting on small stone tables nestled between flower beds. Unlike the tomes of the main library, these books did not need to be borrowed or returned. They waited undisturbed for the hands of those who would find them. Their pages would open precisely to the knowledge their reader sought, whispers of forgotten spells, stories of long-lost magic, lessons never written in any formal curriculum. The garden was a place of quiet discovery, an oasis for those who wandered deep enough into the labyrinth of books to earn its secrets. It was not bound by time. An afternoon spent within its walls felt like mere minutes, and minutes could stretch into hours without notice, as morning light filtered through the enchanted glass above. The hidden garden remained untouched by the rush of the outside world. It would wait, as it always had, for the next soul to stumble upon its sanctuary, ready to share its secrets with those willing to listen. Beyond the hidden garden, the castle had fully awakened. Footsteps echoed through the corridors, students hurrying to morning lessons, their voices bouncing off the ancient walls. In the great hall, breakfast was in full swing, the long tables laden with platters of warm toast, golden eggs, and steaming cups of tea. The The enchanted ceiling reflected the crisp morning sky, streaked with the soft pastels of dawn. But even as the castle bustled with life, its quieter corners held onto the hush of spring's enchantment. The greenhouses, nestled beyond the castle's towering stone walls, remained undisturbed by the morning rush, their glass panes glowing softly in the sunlight. Inside, the plants stirred in their own slow rhythm, stretching toward the warmth of the day. Professor Sprout, her hands dusted with soil, moved through the largest greenhouse, inspecting the magical flora that had begun to awaken fully with the season. Flutterby bushes trembled as she passed, their delicate blossoms quivering with anticipation. Bouncing bulbs, no longer dormant, pulsed with energy, their roots shifting in loose soil, eager for movement. But in a quiet corner, beneath the protective arch of enchanted ivy, the peculiar plant that had begun to bloom the night before remained still. Its petals, tightly furled, shimmered faintly in the dim light, as if waiting. Unlike its neighbors, which reached eagerly for the morning sun, this one held its secrets close. Spring at Hogwarts was not only a season of renewal, it was a season of patience, of quiet transformations that unfolded in their own time. Some magic bloomed overnight, bright and eager, while others lingered in the hush of waiting, hidden between the lines of ancient books, between the shifting staircases and the whispered enchantments that kept the castle alive. As midday approached, the sun climbed higher, casting warm golden light across the Hogwarts grounds. The black lake gleamed, its surface reflecting the sky like a vast mirror. Students, relieved of their morning lessons, began to spill out onto the grass, their laughter drifting on the wind. By the lake's edge, a group of fourth years skipped stones across the water, watching as the ripples spread in concentric rings. Nearby, a pair of second years knelt in the grass, whispering excitedly as they spotted a tiny, iridescent-winged creature hovering just above the surface, a water sprite, shimmering in the sunlight before vanishing with a splash. On the hill overlooking the lake, an enchanted chessboard had been set up once again, the pieces shifting with mechanical precision, engaging in a slow, deliberate battle. Students lounged beneath the shade of towering beech trees, their robes discarded in favor of the cool breeze. Some traced the movement of clouds, pointing out shapes that resembled broomsticks, dragons, or the twisting spires of the castle itself. In this moment, Hogwarts belonged to spring entirely. The castle, ancient and wise, embraced the season not in grand displays, but in these quiet moments of magic, where students found wonder in the flutter of a petal, the shimmer of a potion, the hush of a hidden garden waiting to be found. And in the heart of it all, Hogwarts stood, ever watchful, ever patient, weaving the magic of spring into its very stones. The afternoon sun bathed Hogwarts in golden warmth, stretching its light across the castle grounds, illuminating the ivy-clad walls, and casting gentle shadows beneath the towering trees. The air carried the scent of blooming flowers, parchment warmed by the sun, and the distant trace of wood smoke from Hagrid's hut beyond the sloping hills. The black lake, still and endless, reflected the sky with near-perfect clarity, broken only by the occasional ripple of movement beneath its surface. Students lingered outdoors, unwilling to return to the stone corridors just yet. Some sprawled beneath the shade of beech trees, their eyes fluttering closed, basking in the rare stillness of the afternoon. Others remained by the lake's edge, attempting to coax the giant squid to the surface with bits of leftover toast, laughing whenever a tentacle briefly broke the water. A few Ravenclaws sat together, with open books resting on their laps. Though they read lazily, their gazes drifting upward to watch owls circling high above, their wings cutting smoothly through the clear blue sky. Near the stone courtyard, a group of third years had gathered around an enchanted quill, watching with amusement as it floated midair, frantically scribbling a response to an unspoken riddle. With every wrong guess, the quill would shudder, spewing a puff of indignant blue ink before resetting itself to await another attempt. But beyond the lively chatter and laughter, the deeper magic of Hogwarts stirred in places unseen. Beneath the castle's towering spires, where tunnels twisted beneath the school like a hidden labyrinth, the ancient corridors carried their own quiet hum of enchantment. One such passageway, forgotten by most, lay concealed behind a tapestry near the charms corridor, a narrow stone stairwell that led not downward into the dungeons, but upward into a secretive space untouched by time. Few students ever discovered this hidden alcove, and those who did rarely spoke of it. It was a sanctuary, a place where the air thrummed with old magic, undisturbed by the footsteps of bustling hallways. At its heart, an arched window overlooked the vast grounds of Hogwarts, framing the black lake in the distance and the soft haze of the forbidden forest beyond. Beneath it sat a single stone bench, smoothed over the centuries by those who had found solace here before. Some claimed the alcove had been enchanted by a long-forgotten professor, a place designed to soothe troubled minds. Others believed it had always been there, a natural extension of the castle's sentience, a pocket of space that revealed itself only when it was needed most. The magic here was not the kind found in spellbooks or woven into wands. It was softer, older, something that existed in the very foundation of the castle itself. The late afternoon sun slanted through the arched window, illuminating the faint shimmer of dust motes dancing in the air. The castle, wise and patient, held onto its secrets, revealing them only to those who listened closely enough. As the hours stretched toward evening, the warmth of the day softened into a dusky glow. Shadows grew longer, stretching across the grounds, tracing the edges of familiar pathways. Students began drifting back inside, drawn toward the promise of the evening feast, their conversations carrying through the corridors in lively bursts. In the great hall, the enchanted ceiling reflected the deepening hues of twilight, shades of rose gold melting into indigo. speckled with the first twinkling stars of the night. Candles floated in the air, casting warm light over the 4 longhouse tables, where students gathered in cheerful clusters, sharing stories of the afternoon. Plates filled with steaming dishes, goblets brimmed with pumpkin juice and spiced cider, the aroma of roasted meats and buttered bread mingling with the ever-present hum of magic in the air. Una Lovegood, lost in quiet thought, twirled a spoon absently between her fingers as she gazed at the enchanted sky. Across from her, Neville Longbottom animatedly described an encounter he'd had in the greenhouses earlier that day, explaining how one of the bouncing bulbs had unexpectedly launched itself into the rafters. Ginny Weasley, seated nearby, laughed as she passed a tray of treacle tart to Seamus Finnegan, who was still recovering from an earlier failed charm that had left his eyebrows singed. The castle, ever watchful, embraced these moments of warmth, weaving them into the fabric of its ancient walls. As dinner ended and students began trickling back toward their dormitories, the corridors of Hogwarts took on a different kind of quiet. The laughter of the great hall faded into the background, replaced by the soft padding of footsteps against stone, the rustling of robes, and the occasional creak of staircases shifting of their own accord. The library, now nearly empty, basked in the gentle glow of enchanted lanterns. The towering bookshelves loomed silently, their endless volumes standing like sentinels of forgotten knowledge. Somewhere, a book whispered open on its own, its pages fluttering as if recalling an old memory. High above, in the owlery, the last of the evening post had been sent out, and the owls now rested in their perches, tucking their heads beneath their wings. The distant hoots of those still awake echoed softly against the stone, and outside, beyond the castle walls, the forbidden forest stood at the edge of the horizon, its ancient trees whispering in the night breeze. Unlike the castle, which hummed with enchantments, the forest held its own untamed magic wild, ungoverned, poolsing beneath the tangled roots and shifting canopy. Somewhere deep within its depths, something moved. A rustle of leaves, a flicker of silver light, a presence unseen yet unmistakably there. The creatures of the forest stirred, sensing the shift, the quiet ripple of something yet to unfold. The night at Hogwarts was never truly still. The castle breathed, the magic within its walls pulsed with life, and beyond the grounds, the whisper of something ancient lingered in the air, waiting. Night had fully settled over Hogwarts, draping the castle in a velvety hush, broken only by the occasional flicker of torchlight and the distant rustling of nocturnal creatures beyond the grounds. The great hall, once brimming with the lively hum of dinner, now stood quiet, its long tables cleared, its enchanted ceiling reflecting the endless sprawl of the starlit sky. The castle, ever watchful, remained restless in its own way. In the Ravenclaw Tower, the last of the evening's scholars had gathered in their common room, poring over parchment by the glow of floating blue flames. In Gryffindor's cozy quarters, a fire crackled in the hearth, casting flickering golden light across the crimson tapestries. The Slytherin dormitories, nestled deep within the dungeons, hummed with the faint echo of water lapping against the black lake. And in Hufflepuff's underground halls, the scent of freshly baked biscuits lingered, mingling with the soft murmur of conversation before the warmth of sleep overtook them all. Yet, while the students drifted into slumber, Hogwarts itself remained awake. The magic woven into its very stones stretched and shifted, unseen by most, but ever present. In the grand corridors, portraits whispered among themselves, sharing stories of students past, their painted expressions coming to life in the glow of enchanted lanterns. Some subjects dozed in their frames, their snores barely audible, while others roamed from portrait to portrait, traveling between canvases as they had done for centuries. Deep in the dungeons, the potion for springtime dreams had cooled completely, its surface shimmering softly like morning dew caught in first light. It sat untouched, waiting for the right hands to claim it, its magic undisturbed, its essence holding the quiet promise of spring, woven into a single sip. Beyond the castle walls, the forbidden forest loomed in the darkness, a world apart from the structured enchantments of Hogwarts. Unlike the castle's magic, refined, tempered, controlled, the forest pulsed with something wilder, something ancient, something untamed. Its trees, twisted with centuries of secrets, whispered in the wind, their leaves shivering as though in conversation with the unseen. Tonight, the forest was restless. Beneath its thick canopy, the creatures that called it home stirred, their glowing eyes peering through the undergrowth, their movements careful yet knowing. The centaurs, ever watchful of the stars, stood in small clusters in a clearing bathed in silver moonlight. Ferenza, his golden coat gleaming under the celestial glow, gazed skyward with a furrowed brow, his breath slow and measured. The constellations had shifted ever so slightly, their patterns whispering something only the centaurs could understand. A soft rustle in the undergrowth caught his ear, and he turned, watching as a cluster of bowtruckles scurried up the gnarled bark of an old oak. Their tiny limbs blended seamlessly with the branches, their sharp eyes darting between the shifting shadows. Something was different tonight, further into the depths of the forest, beyond the reach of lantern light and the cautious steps of students who wandered too far. A soft glow pulsed beneath a thicket of silver-leafed ferns. The light, faint and fleeting, shimmered like moonlight trapped in water, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. Whatever it was, the forest had noticed. The centaurs had noticed. Even the winds had shifted, carrying with them the subtle scent of something unfamiliar. Hogwarts, in all its wisdom, had always known that magic was not confined to its stone walls. It breathed in the very land that surrounded it, in the roots of the ancient trees, in the waters of the Black Lake, in the very air that carried the whispers of seasons long past. And tonight, that magic was stirring, just beyond the edge of sight. Back within the castle, the hour had grown late. The enchanted staircases, which so often shifted unpredictably, had stilled for the night, their movements slowed by the weight of centuries of enchantments at rest. The last flickers of torchlight cast elongated shadows against the stone walls, stretching toward the towering windows that overlooked the sprawling grounds. The library, nearly deserted, held onto its own kind of quiet energy. Shelves stood like solemn guardians, filled with the knowledge of generations. The enchanted books slumbered, their pages rustling only when stirred by an unseen current of air. Yet, hidden within the depths of the library, beyond the well-lit reading alcoves and the meticulously organized scrolls, the secret garden remained untouched, its existence known only to the castle itself and those lucky enough to stumble upon it. Under the soft glow of its enchanted sky, the flowers that thrived within the hidden space hummed with their own quiet magic. The twisting silver-barked tree at its center stood in peaceful stillness, its roots intertwined with the very foundation of Hogwarts. And scattered across the stone benches, books lay open but unread, waiting for the next seeker to find them. As midnight settled over the castle, the rhythm of Hogwarts slowed, its pulse steady but never still. The night was deep, the stars high, and in the quiet of the unseen spaces, magic hummed in the bones of the ancient school. Tomorrow, the students would wake to another day of learning, of laughter, of discovery. The enchanted quills would scribble notes, the staircases would resume their playful tricks, and the great hall would once again glow with the golden light of morning. But for now, in this moment, Hogwarts simply existed in its own quiet wonder, alive in a way that only those who truly listened could ever understand. And outside, beyond the castle walls, the forbidden forest whispered secrets to the wind, carrying them across the grounds, through the corridors, and into the dreams of those who called Hogwarts home. The night at Hogwarts stretched on, deep and endless, as the castle rested beneath the watchful stars. Though the students lay curled in their dormitories, wrapped in the warmth of thick blankets, the magic within the ancient walls never truly slept. It pulsed through the stone, whispered through the enchanted staircases, and hummed in the air like a presence just beyond reach. Outside, the forbidden forest remained restless. The centaurs had long since retreated into the deeper woods, their eyes turned toward the shifting constellations above, deciphering messages in the stars only they could read. The trees murmured in the breeze, their tangled roots pressing deep into the earth, holding onto secrets as old as the castle itself. And in the farthest reaches of the forest, where even the bravest students dared not tread, something shimmered, a flicker of silver light, pulsing like a heartbeat before vanishing into the darkness. Yet within the castle, in its most hidden corners, the quiet enchantments of spring continued their work. In the greenhouse, under the watchful care of Professor Sprout, the magical plants responded to the shift in the air. Flutterby bushes quivered, their delicate blossoms trembling with anticipation. The bouncing bulbs had begun to stir again, their roots shifting ever so slightly, eager to spring to life. And in the furthest corner of the greenhouse, beneath the ivy's protective shade, the peculiar plant that had been waiting for the right moment finally began to bloom. Its petals, previously furled tight as if guarding a secret, slowly unfurled in the dim light, revealing a soft glow at its center. It was neither golden nor silver, neither warm nor cold. It was something in between, something not easily named, a hue that flickered like the last light of dusk, just before night fully takes hold. The plant, ancient and rare, had only ever bloomed at Hogwarts in the early weeks of spring, its magic tied to the shifting balance of the seasons. And as its petals opened fully, releasing a faint, luminous mist into the greenhouse air, it was as if the castle itself took notice. The same soft glow flickered elsewhere beyond the walls, in the depths of the Black Lake, where something ancient stirred beneath the water's surface. The ripples were barely perceptible, just the smallest disturbance against the otherwise smooth reflection of the moonlight. The giant squid, normally at rest during these hours, extended one lazy tentacle, tracing slow patterns in the water, as though feeling the pulse of something unseen. And high above, in the owlery, the magic wove itself into the nests that had been carefully constructed over the past weeks. Parchment, quills, wax seals each piece, gathered from the farthest reaches of the castle, now seemed to hum with a quiet energy. The owls, some awake, others sleeping, ruffled their feathers, their golden eyes flickering, as though sensing something just beyond their understanding. Hogwarts, in all its wisdom, had always known how to listen. To the winds, to the shifting of the stars, to the whispers carried through the corridors by unseen forces. It knew when spring had arrived, and it knew when the magic within its very stones needed to be renewed. As dawn approached, the first golden threads of sunlight stretched across the horizon, spilling over the rolling hills and kissing the castle's highest towers. The last remnants of the night faded, retreating into the hidden corners where shadows always lingered. The torches that had burned steadily through the dark dimmed, their enchanted flames softening as daylight took their place. In the dormitories, the first signs of stirring could be heard, blankets rustling, sleepy murmurs as students turned over, reluctant to wake just yet. But the magic of morning was insistent. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall shifted from deep indigo to the soft pastels of dawn, welcoming the new day with golden warmth. The castle, as always, had been waiting for them. By the time the first students made their way into the corridors, rubbing the last remnants of sleep from their eyes, Hogwarts had already prepared itself for their arrival. The staircases, now fully awake, resumed their shifting paths, deciding at whim which routes they would allow and which would be blocked for the day. The enchanted suits of armor, polished to a mirror-like gleam, stood at attention, their crested helmets catching the light as students passed. The paintings, some still dozing in their frames, others already deep in conversation, observed the morning bustle with mild amusement. And in the library, hidden among the endless rows of bookshelves, the secret garden remained untouched, waiting for its next visitor to stumble upon it. The enchanted sky above it reflected the shifting hues of the morning light, casting golden patterns onto the stone pathways below. A book, left open on one of the stone benches, fluttered its pages as if sighing in contentment. By midday, the courtyard was once again filled with the sounds of life, students gathering in small groups, their laughter drifting through the air like birds in flight. Some stretched lazily in the sun, while others sat beneath the beech trees, finishing their essays with half-hearted effort, more focused on the warmth of the afternoon than the words on their parchment. The enchanted chessboard, which had remained untouched since the day before, was once again occupied, its pieces stretching before moving with mechanical precision. A few students watched the match unfold, offering quiet advice to the players, their voices light with amusement as the tiny carved figures responded with haughty indignation at every lost move. Near the lake, a few students waded into the shallows, their robes hitched up as they dared each other to step just a little farther in. The water was cold, but not unbearable, and their laughter echoed across the surface as they quickly retreated back to the shore, shaking droplets from their hands like startled owls. And overhead, the owls continued their silent watch, their wings cutting smooth arcs through the sky, carrying letters and secrets to unseen destinations. Spring had fully settled over Hogwarts now. Its magic had woven itself into every stone, every hidden passage, every quiet moment of wonder waiting to be discovered. It was in the pages of forgotten books, in the shifting staircases, in the way the wind carried the scent of wildflowers through the open windows of the castle. And though the students may not have noticed it outright, they felt it, an unspoken presence, a quiet enchantment woven into the very fabric of Hogwarts itself. The afternoon unfolded like a slow-moving spell, weaving golden light through the ancient corridors of Hogwarts. Outside, spring hummed in full force, the grass thick and green, the air laced with the scent of blooming flowers, and the black lake glistening under the warm embrace of the sun. It was the kind of day that invited idleness, that whispered of lingering by the water's edge, or stretching out beneath the shade of ancient trees, parchment and books forgotten, beside drowsy, sun-kissed students. Up on the highest balcony of Ravenclaw Tower, a few students leaned over the stone railing, watching as the landscape stretched far beyond the castle. The forbidden forest sprawled in the distance, a dark mass of tangled green, mysterious and unyielding. Birds glided lazily in the sky, their wings slicing through the soft breeze. Somewhere down below, the faint echo of laughter carried from the lake's edge, mingling with the occasional whoosh of wind that swept through the open courtyard. Near the greenhouses, Professor Sprout bustled among her students, directing them toward trays of enchanted seedlings that wriggled impatiently in their soil. Hufflepuffs, naturally at home among the plants, worked carefully, their hands moving with practiced ease. A few Gryffindors hesitated as a particularly aggressive vine coiled toward them, its tendrils reaching with mischievous intent. The laughter and yelps that followed were met with amused encouragement from Professor Sprout, who assured them that the plants always knew who was afraid of them. Back at the castle, in the cozy warmth of the Gryffindor common room, a group of fourth years had gathered near the fireplace, despite the pleasant weather outside. A stack of chocolate frogs lay between them, their cards scattered across the floor as they traded duplicates and examined new finds. Nearby, an enchanted paper bird flitted between students, dodging playful swipes before finally coming to rest on the mantel. The fire crackled, though it burned lower now, a mere whisper of embers in comparison to its winter roar. In the library, the air was cooler, quieter. The high-arched windows allowed slants of golden light to filter in, casting long shadows against the towering bookshelves. A few students sat in hushed concentration, bent over their parchment, while others wandered the aisles, fingers trailing lightly over spines of books filled with forgotten spells and whispered knowledge. Madame Pince, ever watchful, hovered nearby, her gaze flicking toward any student who so much as breathed too loudly near the restricted section. Deeper in the library, past the rows of neatly catalogued shelves, lay the hidden garden, untouched and waiting. Its enchanted ceiling reflected the endless sky above, mirroring the shifting hues of afternoon as the sun began its slow descent toward the horizon. The wildflowers swayed gently, though no breeze touched them, reacting instead to the subtle pulse of magic that lingered in the air. Books scattered across small stone benches lay open, their pages shifting as though remembering the hands that had last turned them. Beyond the castle walls, down the sloping hills that led to Hagrid's hut, a group of first years stood huddled in front of a makeshift pen, staring in fascination at the tiny creatures wriggling inside. Hagrid, towering over them, grinned as he scooped up one of the little beings, a strange, twig-like creature with beady black eyes and too many legs. Now these little ones, he rumbled, are called Wimpyroots. Harmless, really, but they're a bit skittish, best not to startle M. The students watched, wide-eyed, as the Wimpyroot curled into a tight spiral in Hagrid's massive palm before unfurling once more, twitching its leafy appendages. "Are they dangerous?" a small Hufflepuff asked. "Only if ye insult their mothers," Hagrid chuckled. The students giggled, tension easing as Hagrid gently placed the creature back among its siblings. The creatures, though odd, were harmless enough, and as the first years knelt down to get a closer look, the Wimpyroots twitched curiously, their little limbs stretching toward the warm sunlight. The day stretched on, slowly unraveling like a well-worn story, each moment folding into the next with quiet wonder. Hogwarts itself seemed to embrace the gentle pace, its very stones warmed by the passing hours, its corridors carrying the echoes of centuries of laughter, whispered secrets, and unspoken magic. As dusk approached, the sky melted into a rich blend of purples and deepening blues. The great hall prepared itself for the evening feast, the enchanted ceiling reflecting the last golden streaks of sunlight before the first stars began to appear. The long tables, soon to be filled with students, glowed under the flickering candlelight, plates already gleaming in anticipation of the feast to come. Outside, the castle grounds softened into shadow. The black lake, now darker in the fading light, stretched out like a vast mirror, the occasional ripple breaking its perfect reflection. Near the shore, a few students lingered, reluctant to end the day just yet. Some traced idle patterns in the sand, while others sat in quiet companionship, listening to the rhythmic lapping of water against the shore. In the owlery, the nighttime shift had begun. Owls stretched their wings, adjusting their feathers as they prepared for their evening flights. Letters, tied securely to their legs with neat bits of twine, fluttered slightly in the breeze that slipped through the arched windows. One by one, the birds took flight, soaring into the night, their silhouettes blending into the deepening sky. As the evening settled in, the quiet magic of Hogwarts continued its unseen dance. The castle breathed, its walls filled with the history of those who had walked its halls before, and those who still lingered within them. Its magic was old, woven into the fabric of every brick, every staircase, every hidden passageway and forgotten alcove. It held the laughter of students past and present, the whispered incantations of young witches and wizards learning their craft, the hush of midnight secrets exchanged between friends. And as the stars began to glow brighter overhead, the castle stood, ancient and eternal, welcoming the night as it had done for centuries. It knew that tomorrow would bring more whispered spells, more laughter, more wonder. Spring at Hogwarts was more than a season, it was a feeling, a quiet enchantment woven into every shadow and sunbeam, into every whispered breeze and rippling wave. It was a promise of new beginnings, of endless possibilities waiting to unfold. And as the last candle flickered low, the castle exhaled, its magic settling into the hush of the night, waiting for the dawn to bring yet another day of quiet, wondrous magic. Night deepened over Hogwarts, draping the castle in its cool embrace. Yet within its ancient walls, something unseen stirred. The great stone halls, once filled with the lively hum of students, now carried only the whisper of torches flickering in their sconces. Shadows stretched long across the corridors, bending around corners, twisting against the enchanted tapestries that adorned the walls. The magic of the castle did not sleep, it only softened, weaving itself into the quiet spaces, waiting. In the enchanted greenhouses, the plants remained restless. Some quivered in their pots, their delicate blossoms shivering under the soft glow of the floating lanterns. The bouncing bulbs, fully awakened by spring's arrival, pulsed gently in their soil, their roots shifting in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Near the farthest window, peculiar plant that had bloomed the night before remained luminous, its faint glow pulsing in time with an unseen force, as though in conversation with the magic around it. Beyond the castle walls, the forbidden forest loomed in silent watch, its canopy dark against the starlit sky. The creatures within it moved cautiously, sensing the shift in the air, the almost imperceptible ripple of something stirring beneath the fabric of the world. The centaurs, gathered in their sacred glade, turned their eyes skyward once more, their unreadable expressions betraying a quiet knowing. The stars spoke of change, of something unseen threading its way through the folds of time. Near the edge of the Black Lake, where the shoreline curved in a crescent of smooth stone, a silver mist began to rise, curling low over the surface of the water. It was subtle at first, no more than a shimmer, but soon it thickened, swirling like smoke, catching the moonlight in its shifting tendrils. The lake, ever watchful, held onto its mysteries, its depths hiding secrets that had existed long before Hogwarts itself. And though the mist was fleeting, vanishing as quickly as it had appeared, the ripples it left behind lingered, stretching outward in slow, deliberate rings. Within the castle, in the quiet corridors that wound through its labyrinthine structure, another kind of magic stirred. Books in the library shifted slightly on their own, their pages fluttering as if breathing. Somewhere in the restricted section, a thick, leather-bound tome unlatched itself, its cover creaking open just an inch before settling again, content to wait for the right hands to find it. In the Ravenclaw common room, a soft blue glow pulsed from a forgotten corner, where an enchanted quill lay abandoned atop a stack of half-finished essays. It twitched, as if remembering the work left unfinished, then stilled, its magic settling once more into the quiet. Down in the dungeons, the potion for springtime dreams sat undisturbed in its cauldron, its surface smooth and unbroken, its shimmering hues shifting like dawn's first light. It had been left to cool overnight, its enchantment woven into every delicate ingredient, waiting for the moment it would be used. As the castle breathed through the hush of midnight, the enchanted staircases remained still, their usual shifting patterns subdued, as though the castle itself had decided to rest. The paintings, however, did not sleep. Some of them whispered among themselves, their voices no more than murmurs, their conversations weaving through the corridors like threads of forgotten stories. Others roamed their frames, moving from portrait to portrait, visiting neighboring canvases in quiet curiosity. In the owlery, the birds remained perched in their high alcoves, some with their heads tucked beneath their wings, others gazing out over the vast landscape beyond the castle. A few owls, sensing the shift in the night's energy, fluttered their feathers and took flight, soaring silently into the sky, their dark forms cutting across the moon's glow. And far below, in the castle's lowest chambers, where few ever wandered, the foundations of Hogwarts stood unmoving, silent sentinels to the ages. The castle had stood for centuries, built upon layers of ancient magic, a upon whispers of forgotten spells and the echoes of those who had walked its halls before. Hogwarts, ever watchful, ever knowing, held onto its secrets. It existed in the spaces between moments, in the hush of moonlight filtering through high-arched windows, in the quiet inhale of a student turning the page of an old book, in the distant lap of waves against the shore of the Black Lake. Spring had woven itself into the very stones of the castle, soft and unyielding. A quiet transformation that unfolded in its own time. Some magic made itself known in bursts of color and energy, spells cast in excitement, potions brewed with careful precision. But some magic lingered in the unseen places, in the waiting, in the spaces between heartbeats. As the first breath of morning stirred, the castle seemed to sigh, settling into the final hours of the night. The torches flickered lower, their flames dimming just slightly as the sky outside shifted from deep indigo to the first hints of soft lavender. The stars, which had shone so brightly overhead, began their slow retreat, fading into the promise of dawn. Hogwarts, ancient and eternal, remained awake, holding onto the hush of the night just a little longer before the new day began. The first light of dawn spilled over the Scottish Highlands, stretching golden fingers across the rolling hills and tracing the ancient towers of Hogwarts in soft morning glow. The castle, wise and knowing, stirred with the gentle hum of waking magic. Though it had never truly slept, it now shifted, adjusting to the quiet transformation that morning always brought. The last remnants of night melted away, shadows retreating into corners where they would wait for dusk to return. The enchanted torches, which had burned steadily through the dark, dimmed further, giving way to the sunlight that now streamed through high-arched windows. The great hall's enchanted ceiling reflected the changing sky, where the fading stars made their slow descent beyond the horizon, replaced by the delicate pastel hues of a new day. Deep in the greenhouses, the magical plants welcomed the morning with movement so subtle, so delicate, that it might have gone unnoticed had anyone been watching. The flutterby bushes quivered in the gentle air, their blossoms unfolding in slow, deliberate motion. The bouncing bulbs had stilled overnight, but now twitched ever so slightly, sensing the shift in the season's magic. And the peculiar plant, the one that had remained hidden beneath the ivy's protective shade, pulsed with the soft glow of dawn, its petals fully unfurled at last. Near the lake, where the first warm breeze of the morning stirred the tall reeds, the water reflected the castle's grand silhouette in perfect symmetry. The Black Lake held onto its mysteries, its surface smooth, betraying nothing of the ancient magic that slumbered beneath its depths. A single ripple broke its stillness, a faint movement, subtle and fleeting, as though something had acknowledged the arrival of the new day. In the courtyards and along the castle walls, vines continued their slow climb, reclaiming their place among the ivy-covered stone. The flowers that had curled in on themselves the evening before now stretched toward the rising sun, basking in the soft, golden light. Even the enchanted hedges near the entrance to the castle hummed with the energy of spring, their deep green leaves rustling despite the absence of wind. The staircases, still and obedient through the quiet of night, resumed their unpredictable movements, shifting with renewed purpose. Some led students on unexpected detours, while others aligned perfectly for those who had learned their secrets. The paintings, no longer bound by the hush of midnight, were once again alive with chatter, some muttering about the morning's early hour, others already engaged in debates about historical events long past. In the Ravenclaw Tower, the last flickers of blue flame danced in the common room's enchanted fireplace before vanishing entirely, replaced by the soft light filtering through tall windows. In the Slytherin dungeons, the gentle lapping of the black lake against the stone walls continued its rhythmic whisper, an unbroken lullaby carried through the generations. In the Gryffindor common room, a few students stretched and yawned, pulling blankets tighter around themselves, reluctant to let go of the warmth of sleep. And in Hufflepuff's underground haven, the scent of fresh bread and morning tea drifted through the halls, a quiet comfort that welcomed the new day. The library, silent and watchful, carried the lingering hum of midnight's enchantments. The shelves, which had straightened themselves overnight, now stood in perfect rows, waiting for the hands of eager students. Deep within its hidden sanctuary, the secret garden remained undisturbed, its sky reflecting the changing hues above, its flowers still glowing softly in the golden light. The books scattered across stone benches sat untouched, their pages fluttering slightly, as though breathing in the hush of morning. And far above, in the owlery, the birds stirred. Some stretched their wings, their feathers catching the early sunlight that streamed through the open arches. Others, sensing the change in the air, took flight, soaring into the vast sky, their wings casting fleeting shadows against the castle walls. Letters, tied carefully to their legs, fluttered as they glided toward unseen destinations, carrying whispered words across the world. As the first students emerged from their dormitories, the castle fully embraced the morning. The air carried the scent of damp earth and fresh parchment, of enchanted ink, and the faint trace of honeysuckle from the courtyard vines. The halls, now filling with soft footsteps and sleepy conversations, hummed with the familiar rhythm of another day at Hogwarts. In the great hall, breakfast awaited, the long tables adorned with steaming platters of toast and eggs, goblets filled with pumpkin juice, and enchanted tea that warmed instantly at the touch. The enchanted ceiling reflected the shifting sky, the last traces of dawn giving way to a bright, cloudless expanse. Luna Lovegood wandered in, her gaze drifting toward the floating candles as she absent-mindedly tucked a stray curl behind her ear. Across the hall, Neville Longbottom grinned as he described an encounter with a particularly stubborn, venomous tentacula in the greenhouses. Ginny Weasley listened with amusement, absently tapping her spoon against the rim of her goblet, while Seamus Finnegan waved his hands animatedly retelling a story that involved an unfortunate explosion and a slightly singed set of robes. The castle walls, ancient and knowing, held onto these moments, absorbing them into the tapestry of its endless history. Hogwarts had seen centuries of laughter, of whispered secrets, of friendships forged over shared textbooks and late-night adventures. It had watched generations grow, had sheltered them in its halls, had guided them through the delicate balance of learning and magic. And now, in the golden light of morning, it did so once again. Spring had fully settled into Hogwarts, no longer just a passing visitor, but a part of the castle itself. It wove itself into the sunlit corridors, into the hidden alcoves where students whispered in hushed excitement, into the very air that carried the warmth of new beginnings. It thrived in the enchanted greenhouses, in the shifting staircases, in the gentle ripples of the Black Lake. It whispered through the forbidden forest, rustling the leaves of ancient trees, stirring the quiet magic that had existed long before wands were ever carved from their branches. And though the students may not have noticed it outright, they felt it, an unspoken presence, a quiet enchantment woven into the very foundation of Hogwarts itself. As the morning stretched forward, as lessons began, as laughter filled the halls once more, the castle stood as it always had, timeless, eternal, carrying the quiet magic of spring within its very walls. And so, beneath the watchful gaze of its towers, under the endless sky reflected in the enchanted ceilings, Hogwarts welcomed another day, wrapped in the quiet, wondrous spell of the changing season. The end.